Hello, Doctor Who fans across the world, wherever you are, and welcome to another Who Corner to Corner podcast. My name is Paul, and I am joined this afternoon by my very good chum, Mr. Geoff. How you doing, Mr. Geoff?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. It's a little bit chilly outside. There is a forecast of snow. Not that I'm obsessed with the weather or anything like that, but of course I am British, and references to the current weather situation are required, are a necessity even, before any kind of conversation begins. So I'm just ticking that box.
And when you get to a certain age as well, it's one of your, the go-tos, isn't it?
So you got to talk about, mate, to be honest. Yeah, that's all there is, isn't it? You know, what else are you going to talk about? Nothing else to do during the day, is there, eh?
We do.
Except have a go at the young'uns.
We do have something to talk about. We hope
do.
Our listeners and our watchers, viewers, enjoyed our live rendition of the theme music there, including dance moves as well.
I wouldn't call them dance moves. I'd be hesitant to even call them moves, to be honest. You know, it's more like spasmodic jerking.
What you do in your own time.
It's entirely up to you, my friend. Right, enough of these double entendres. Let's crack on with today's topic, which is... Dun, 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 dun. Oh, do you know what? Hold on. Let's crack on with today's topic, which is... the Essential 13th Doctor. We just for the record, we haven't played in studio sound effects live before, so I've got all these buttons that I'm just playing around with, and
get ready for an overload.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, there could be all kinds of stuff, couldn't there, Geoff? You know, you never know. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. I know. Yes, darlings, be quiet. I know, we're such stars.
You love me. You really love me.
Yeah, right.
His finger's stuck.
Finger got stuck there. Right, so yes, anyway, we are going to be talking about the Essential 13th Doctor. Now, we did a very, very popular, at least 3 people listened to it, podcast recently on the Essential 11th Doctor. These were episodes which we felt anybody watching or anybody being introduced to the 11th Doctor would probably do pretty well by watching these episodes to get a flavour of what the 11th Doctor's era was about. And it was so popular, honestly, literally millions of people said do something else. So we thought we would do the 13th Doctor in a similar vein.
Well, we ran a poll, didn't we? So
we did, actually, and the 13th Doctor won by a country mile.
Closely followed by 12th Doctor was first.
Yes.
In second place. So these are, as you might have guessed by now, this is a series called Essential. Where we're going to look at our favourite episodes and perhaps books and audios and etc. for Doctors, maybe companions as well, all sorts of things.
Yeah, we definitely do companions. I think we should also do villains as well.
Yes.
Do the Essential Master, the Essential Daleks, that kind of thing. Obviously, in a year without much new Doctor Who on the TV, we've got to fill the weeks with content.
We're not scraping the barrel. But,
no, not at all. We've got loads of ideas.
Yeah.
But on that, if you come up with any ideas, let us know.
We want to keep going weekly, but
we do.
It's tricky. Yeah, like Paul said, there's nothing on air, and we don't want to just keep doing the stuff that we've done before, or kind of.
We want to mix it up a bit, don't we? Yeah, that's the thing. We
don't want to reiterate what other podcasts are perhaps doing, and we try to get our guests, but sometimes we get a bit of a rush on people who said yes. Like we've had a couple of Big Finish people.
We've got some good guests coming up soon, though.
Yes, yeah, we do. Target novel fans should keep their.
I was going to leave that for secret.
No, I've tweeted about it.
Yeah, honestly,
who it is though.
No idea of keeping suspense.
Right, on that note, let's get
let's crack on, shall we?
More suspense. Right, you start. What's your number 5?
My number 5 13th Doctor story is without any question of a doubt, the woman who fell to Earth. If you want an idea of what the 13th Doctor is about and the style and the tone of the show and everything else, then that's the one, really, And it's unsurprising that really, because I said the same with the 11th Doctor. It was the 11th hour, the first episode of that Doctor, and it's no surprise, really. I think that should be the case. But what's quite interesting is when you compare it to like the 7th Doctor's first story, or the 6th Doctor's first story, or even the 4th Doctor's first story, or the 2nd, maybe the 3rd as well. Actually, the classic Doctors. Even things like the Christmas Invasion, perhaps, they don't really seem to typify what that Doctor becomes later on. If you're going to pick an essential 4th Doctor story, it's unlikely really that Robot, his first story, would be in the list, because it's more a 3rd Doctor story, and it's not really essential what I would call 4th Doctor. Mm-hmm. I'm labouring to make a point here. The point I guess I'm making is that with more of the recent Doctors, it seems that everything is kind of set out in the stall of that first episode. Yeah. So I think certainly here with the 13th Doctor, we've got everything. We've got heroism, we've got her compassionate nature, we've got her chaotic kind of, do this, do that, kind of almost like a magpie, shiny thing, sort of chaotic mind, way of approaching things that she's got. And of course we got the fam, we got the dynamics that are kind of played out through that episode. We got some setup with the relationships. There's hints of backstories with Ryan and his dad and his, and of course we got quite a moving death as well.
Yeah, with as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's a good one, I think, and it is, as I said before in this podcast, it represents such a shift in tone. Everything's different. The Doctor's different. She's a different gender. The music's different. It's just gone. The what's his name?
Murray Gold.
Murray Gold's bombastic orchestral scores have vanished in place of something which is much more moody, kind of atmospheric, more in my mind like the original kind of first Doctor stories, the Daleks and what have you, where they're sort of setting a tone, a mood, and making you feel chill. So it's that's the one for me. If you're going to watch no other 13th Doctor story, make sure you watch that one. It's got everything.
That's a really good choice. I thought you might pick that one, so I didn't put that on my list.
I always like to be predictable.
Yeah. Well, we had 11th Hour from 11th Doctor as one of his essential episodes.
That was mine as well. I picked that one. Yeah.
But you made a good point that, like looking back at the Christmas Invasion, the 10th Doctor spends most of the episode in bed, so he didn't really do much in it. And so it's kind of hard to get a gauge for the iteration of the character within that sort of limited screen time. Whereas in the 11th Hour, probably deep breath as well with the 12th Doctor, and this one here with 13. They're up and running literally, from the beginning. And thinking about it, it's not many shows really that kind of give you these kind of jumping on points. Is there? You might have a soft reboot on a series, on a season midway through a series or something, 4 or 5 years in, but it's still kind of carrying on all the continuity and characters and stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Doctor Who does obviously do that, but each new Doctor is a fairly sort of separate new chapter in many ways, and so these regeneration episodes are really kind of essential to kind of get in on the ground level with the Doctor.
Get in on the ground level. Yeah, exactly that.
So
what's yours then, Geoff?
Well, I'm going to neatly follow on from that with the Ghost Monument.
I knew you were going to say this one.
This is the second episode of the 13th Doctor's run, and The Woman Who Fell to Earth ends on a cracking cliffhanger, as you probably know. And when they're on the hunt for the TARDIS, which we haven't seen at all in the first episode, so you're sort of Chibnall left you waiting to see what the new exterior looked like, and of course, importantly, the new interior. And also, you didn't get a title sequence or theme on that first episode either. So they end up stranded on an alien planet in the Ghost Monument, and get caught up in a kind of cross-planet like triathlon type thing, don't they? With a couple of people. And there's a few hints about story arcs that will come into play across the era. And then eventually reuniting with the TARDIS. And this was the episode really like that kind of it knocked my socks off really in a way, because it was the show at the time at its most epic. Filming abroad, great big kind of deserts and beaches and kind of
sweeping landscapes.
Yeah, crashing spaceships. Great opening sequence that's sort of like a single take on a spaceship and stuff. It's brilliantly done. Really exciting.
Oh, that opening take with Jodie on the ship is phenomenal.
So well
so
done.
Good.
You get more info about the fam, and they're literally throwing straight into it, into sort of danger and action and everything. And then at the end, when the TARDIS reappears, I've talked about this before, but it's an incredibly moving sequence, and my absolute favourite, in all of Doctor Who. Jodie's Doctor goes back up to the TARDIS and goes in and has this moment seeing the inside on her own, for the first time before the fam come in, and it's just brilliant, the way it's shot, the way it's performed and written, the music, it's beautiful. This for me is an essential, so it ties in quite nicely with your choice there.
I like it, mate. Yes, that's a good one. So, so my number 4 then, in that case, is going to follow on from yours. Although not directly. Well, no, I'll tell you what, I was debating. I'm going to go for, I'm actually going to go for Demons of the Punjab. Because I want to, one thing which the 13th Doctor's era has done brilliantly is reintroduce the historicals back into the show. Now, I know we've had adventures in the past before, and this arguably is one of them. But this is I think with Rosa and Demons of the Punjab, we have two very, very grounded historical adventures, which are not, the history is not so much the backdrop. It is the backdrop, but it's also the focus of the story, the pivotal events in Rosa, and of course the pivotal events in in Rosa, they're kind of played out with the person responsible for that shift in cultural history. With Demons of the Punjab, you got the War of the Petition, which is happening in the background, but it directly affects the story of what happens to that small cast of characters. They're not the ones driving the War of Partition. They're not the ones changing the world. They're the people caught up in this horrific division within their culture. That is, and I think coming at this from from a sort of Western perspective, certainly from my sort of schooling, I'd never heard of the War of Partition until I was much older, and it was kind of just it might have been referenced as part of general sort of World War II era kind of history, but it was never we were never told what caused it. We were never told about the people who were caught up or the political sort of maneuverings of one part or another. We were never told about the religious part, the part that religion played in this and what the attitudes were. I think obviously when I was older, I started to read up a little bit more and watching various films which kind of gave me sort of an eye on it, but it was never something that I seemed to know anything about really. No. And I'd argue I still don't know really anything, but since watching that story, it's really kind of it did what the historical adventures had always been tasked with doing since the very, very early Hartnell days, to kind of educate in a way. And that's what I feel this one did, by showing us a family caught up in these events. I started to understand a little bit more about it, and I actually wanted to then go on and find out more about it as well. Just because I hate having gaps in my knowledge. There are loads of them, but this is one that I genuinely wanted to know more about, partly because of the TV show, the episode itself, and it had a lot of poignancy to it as well, which I think is another hallmark of the 13th Doctor's era. The emotions to me are genuinely felt throughout. Sometimes you can kind of go along with a bit of excitement or feel a little bit sad or something, but this, I think, really had me kind of choking up, genuinely, because I felt for these characters. And I think also maybe there was a kind of double resonance because the first time that episode aired, it went out on Remembrance Sunday, which is kind of a nice, happy coincidence in a way. Yeah. So, it kind of reflected that whole mood of, sort of the cost of the cost to families, to lives, as they play their parts in history. You know, people who go out and fight these wars, or just get caught up in them through no fault of their own, you know, and have their families torn apart by such things. And, you know, this was the first time I think that I'd really felt that kind of emotion with Doctor Who. So it's and it's a great story to my mind anyway. It's you know, the designer on it is brilliant. I think the Thajarans, I know there's a lot of discussion about whether or not they were needed. You could probably argue one way or the other, but I love the fact they were there. Again, it gave it more resonance. So that to me, I guess, would, you know, would make me choose Demons over Rosa, but it's a very, very close call for those two historicals.
Yeah, it's a brilliant episode, and, you know, like exactly as you said, you know, they really brought back that historical feel to it, and by making it, you know, it told about the, you know, the historical story, but made it kind of personal and emotional at the same time, and made something that's not, it's not dry, but something, you know, that could come across as quite factual. You know, they made it, I think they made it real, you know, by that narrative on it. So my fourth choice was going to be Rosa. Is going to be Rosa, because for similar reasons, really. You know, it was the third episode in that series 11, and I just thought, I couldn't believe how good it was in terms of its, you know, its drama. It's tackling, you know, big issues that are still relevant today, tackling a, you know, a story that people know, but perhaps don't know all the kind of details of, and the ins and outs of it, and handling it, I felt, you know, with kind of, you know, respect and, you know, grace on it, I guess, and you know, it was really quite powerful, and you know, with Ryan and Yaz in it as well, you know, they were able to kind of, and again, a bit like with Demons of the Punjab, you know, they were able to take those characters and kind of give the story character relevance, and you know, kind of bring the emotion out of it all, and bring you into it a bit more by having Yaz's Nan as part of Demons of the Punjab. It made it really personal and you know, close to her character, and also with Rosa, and also really the same with Demons of the Punjab, just an epic, you know, production.
Oh, completely.
Shot on board, you know, beautifully done. You know, fantastic recreations of both eras. You know, the show has never looked better in its
absolutely, you know, right,
in the last era. So, but yeah, and these two episodes are great proof that sci-fi can be used to tell really strong, you know, emotional and engaging stories, and relevant stories, and relevant, well, you know, and it's not just about spaceships or, you know, robots or whatever. You know, these are about events and about people, and you know, there is a slight sci-fi element, particularly to Rosa, which I think went in quite nicely. But you know, this, you know, sci-fi stuff can be used to tell these big and important and moving stories, and it's not just, like I said, about robots and spaceships.
No,
like that.
Quite right. I do remember the first time Freya and I watched Rosa on the night it first aired, and, you know, I think that last 15, 20 minutes or so are among the most tense that Doctor Who has ever been, I think. You know, the whole thing with the bus and trying to get it to run on time, and, you know, which is bizarre in a way, you know, because it's not like universe shattering stakes. It's not like racing against the countdown for a bomb to explode or something like that, but it kind of is. It kind of plays on that, and but for me, that it seems to have actually much more tension because it was something that was more relatable. You know, like you said, you know, it's not just about robots and aliens and stuff like that. It's about something very real, which we know. I mean, it's the old argument of Doctor Who, isn't it? You know, does this thing have to happen? You know, well, you know, for history to play out the way we want to, which is again a great thing that we've had since the days of Doctor Who, and what was it, the Aztecs, I think. You know, again, another Hartnell story where it sort of posed that question. You know, you can't change history, not one jot, or something, and yet history is changed, but it kind of isn't changed as well. It still reaches the same point in time in the right place. And of course, Graham particularly is kind of caught up in it, and you kind of see on his face, his realization that he is a guy playing now a pivotal part in this. He doesn't want to, because it goes against everything that he believes in, but he kind of has to, and it's raw. It really is. Yeah, and quite something for Doctor Who to put itself in that place, which is really a silly old sci-fi TV show. Well, when it does stuff like this, it isn't silly at all. No.
Yeah, it was quite. Brave's not maybe the right word, but to tackle stuff like this that is quite different, from the historicals of recent years, which were always kind of billed as celebrity historicals, and they were great fun and adventurous and all that, but these two were real stuff in them, and could be a bit of a shock to the system to have something that kind of powerful going in it, but that's another one of the strengths of the era. I think that it tackled stuff like this and did so well with it. So hit me with your number 3.
I'm still in series 11, to be honest, mate. Do you know what? I really, really love season 11. It's kind of my comfort space. I mean, I love all the 13th Doctor stories. I 12 and 13 as well, but I think 11 is just quite unique in terms of its style, its storytelling, and its placement. Series 12, in some ways, kind of almost treads back into the sort of Stephen Moffat, Russell T Davies tropes. But Series 11 is pure, unadulterated 13th Doctor, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going for one which I wasn't quite sure about this first time round, but the second time I watched it, I honestly thought it's probably one of the best Doctor Who stories I've ever seen. And again, it is essential 13th Doctor because it's so unique, and it's going to be It Takes You Away. Who's with me on this one? Come on, people. Up the frog. To be honest, the animatronic frog at the end of this is the thing that kind of threw me at the end. I thought, what the hell? Are they really doing this? And I couldn't think in my head how it really worked the first time round. I was like, what? I think, what is Twitter making of this? I had to jump on Twitter just to kind of get it. And I'm like, whoa, jeez, let's put that to one side for a moment. You know what I mean? It was explosive. Love the frog, hate the frog, love the frog, hate the frog. It was quite incredible. But of course, the story's not about the frog, is it? It's about a lot of other things.
The frog is just a construct. It's a bit like there is no spoon in the Matrix.
I don't know what that is.
So the episode is about the Doctor and the fam go to where was it they end up?
They go to Norway.
That's it, Norway. Yeah.
And the one with the jaggedy coastline.
That's it, and they discover a house that's all sort of windows and stuff are boarded up, and you're led to believe that there's something in the woods that kind of comes out at night and stuff, and then it kind of, goes from there, and you discover more, and then there's a sort of parallel world type thing, Mirrorverse, and then the frog turns up at the end sitting on a chair. People, some people hated it. Was it because of the fact that it was a frog, and they were like, oh, well, God, that's weird, which is a bit strange. I think if you're watching sci-fi stuff, you need to have an open mind. I think to by default accept some of this stuff. Is it strange that there's a talking frog? Yes. If it turned up in like EastEnders, you'd be like, what are they smoking? But for me, it's not. In many ways, it's not dissimilar to a burping bin back in Rose, or your favourite, the moon being an egg. Do you know what I mean? I know these are things that some people like, some people don't like. But it's not bad. It doesn't mean it's bad. It essentially means you don't you haven't liked it, which is fine. But I think the reaction to it was probably a bit over the top, and it sort of seemed to build up steam.
Do you know what? Yeah, I agree, and I think actually, the frog does have its place. It's got a kind of a double sort of meaning to it. Well, probably 3 or 4 different layers to it, to be honest. And this is another thing I love about Jodie's era. Not everything is on the surface. There are much deeper levels to pretty much all the stories, particularly in Series 11, that reward repeated viewing, because there's things that you'll pick up on the second, third, fourth time round. I think generally with a lot of the earlier stories in Doctor Who, you can probably get them after one or two views. Yeah. And there's not much else really, apart from just enjoying the moment over and over again, which is fine, and I love that as much as anything. But what I love more, perhaps, is actually watching a story, getting something out of it, watching it again, getting something more out of it, and then again and again and again, up to like 4 or 5 times. It's like, my goodness, I didn't realise that. Whether it's something in the story, whether it's something in the dialogue, whether it's something in its kind of allegorical, sort of metaphorical structure as well, and loads and loads of different layers. And I just love that. So the frog in itself, obviously, it kind of stems out of it's Grace's totem almost, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
It's the thing she's always loved frogs, which we see actually in the first story, The Woman Who Fell at Worth. If you look carefully, there's a few little froggy things sort of around the place, and right, that's only quite small, but nonetheless, it's there. It's not suddenly introduced in this story. It's considered through from way back. So it has that resonance, and of course that kind of sort of adds in a way to the grief that Graham is still going through at that point. It's he's kind of thrown himself into the adventures in the TARDIS with something kind of abandoned almost. It's almost like he just finished delivering the speech at Grace's funeral and joins the rest of the fam on these adventures through space and time. But throughout all of that, he's still trying to deal with his loss, and that is kind of bubbling through the stories up to this point. But when it comes to It Takes You Away, suddenly his grief comes right to the surface. So there's that story going on, and then you've also got the whole thing, like you said, of the mirror universe and the power of this universe to kind of entice people away, particularly people who are vulnerable, who are experiencing this sort of grief, which in a way also marries what that universe, which is a conscious universe itself, is actually feeling. It's feeling a loss as well, right? It's being exercised from the rest of the universe. And okay, you have to kind of go along with some really wild stuff here, but actually a lot of that stuff is also present in a lot of Scandinavian fiction. A lot of fairy tales and the trolls of the mountains and all the dark places of the forest. Ideas and tropes which this story pulls from have been present within that sort of fiction for years, and I love the way it kind of pulls that element out of it. Also pulls out of things like the whole Scandi thriller fiction genre as well, right? Which it pulls out in terms of visuals with the house, the log cabin in the woods, and the kind of weirdness, the monsters that might be lurking in the woods. There is so much going on, and then you even have the idea of the interzone, or I can't remember quite what they pull it, the interdimensional or something like that. And what's the guy called? Ribbons, isn't it? Yeah. Which who is a kind of weird sort of, again, a fairy tale troll-like character, who guards this kind of in-between zone with those ridiculous moths. And moths, my friend, are the one creature that I have a massive, massive phobia for. My wife, snakes. Right, really? She can't even look at a snake. With me, it's the same with moths. Right. They genuinely put the fear into me. There's nothing else I get frightened of, but moths, I can't. If I have one in the room, mate, I can't be in the same room. I really can't. Thinking about it and talking about it and seeing those big bastards floating around in them light balloons. No, take it somewhere else. So it generally had a fear to it as well. Plus, another great thing about, and I haven't even started on the whole psychology of it, right? But it's because there is a massive, massive rich vein to kind of tap from. But the Jodie's performance in this is astonishing, absolutely astonishingly good, because not only does she rattle off some techno babble at energy levels that are unprecedented. She's she switches between that and also the emotional part of it. The fact that here's a doctor who is actually willing to give up everything to be friends with this universe, to give it some kind of companionship. That's a sort of compassion that we might have seen glimpses of in the past, but here it really comes to the forefront.
Because the frog, the solid tract kind of manifests as a an important persona.
Oh yes, back to the frog. Got
to go back to the frog. And because there was, I wonder sometimes if people kind of, they headcanon stuff, and then there's a sort of disappointment because there was talk of, I thought it might have been River or Susan or something like that, sitting on the chair, and could it have been more, less bonkers and perhaps a bit more related to the Doctor if it was a past companion or something? Yeah, perhaps, but I don't think it matters that it's that thing there of, the solid track, like you said, is this sort of, it's like a child in a way,
and it's not about the Doctor really, is it?
No,
it's about Grace. Grace is the person who comes back from the dead, who the universe kind of manifests to give itself a voice. Yeah. When at that point it uses Graham's grief, not the Doctor's. The Doctor gives, promises to give her everything that the universe needs at the end, and yet it still kind of manifests as Grace's favourite thing, which I think is, it's quite important. It's not about the Doctor. It's about a very human kind of emotion, I think, in a way, and that frog just sort of links into that in a way through Grace, not through the Doctor, even though this is Doctor Who. It links it through Grace because she's us. Grace is us, really. Graham is us. Ryan is us. Yes, these are the mouthpieces of the viewers, of us watching the show, right? It's always been the case that the companion is the gateway into the Doctor's wild and wacky universe, and I think this story really kind of pulls into that in a way that no other story has done before, with a kind of depth and honesty and an integrity to its emotional content. Actually, like most of other, season 11 stuff tends to, but wrapped up in all this Scandi stuff, and it's an astonishing story. It's completely unique. It might not be, thinking about it, actually, it might not be the essential, because if you didn't watch this, it wouldn't really matter. But actually, you'd be losing a sort of texture. That is part of the 13th Doctor's tapestry, I think.
I don't think essential necessarily has to be ones that you're going to miss out on story of.
We make our own criteria up as we go along, Geoff, frankly.
Yeah. So, well, saying that, my next choice, my 3, is sort of an essential one. So this is, I'm going to go Spyfall Parts 1 and 2.
Oh, brilliant.
Because, again, this is the show kind of firing on all cylinders. It was massive, international locations, crashing airplanes, alien worlds, Australia, all sorts of stuff. But this is where we get the Master back.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Oh my goodness! And do we get him back?
And he becomes, in many ways, her kind of prime antagonist across the tenure, and sets up a whole load of stuff here. With Gallifrey and various things, which kind of continue to be in play. After all of this, for the rest of this season and beyond. So the episode really kind of deals a lot for the Doctor, but it's also just great fun as well. It's kind of a Bond Mission Impossible type spy thing going on, which then kind of changes a bit, and we end up with the Doctor separated from the fam, with it's almost a double cliffhanger actually at the end of part 1, isn't it?
It is.
So you get to see the fam standing on their own 2 feet, and in Graham's case using his soft shoe shuffle laser shoes. I quite like filmmaking, TV making, when they kind of go all out, and this really was it. Pulling out all the stops to do something big. It's
epic again, isn't it? Whereas Series 11 is kind of, it's quite intimate. It
is. Well, I was just thinking there about it takes you away. It almost entirely takes place within the house and its grounds. You get the what do they call it? The antiverse or something? It's like the sort of space between dimensions, isn't it? In that fabric between them. So that you get that kind of rocky, tunnely, type stuff. But yeah, a lot of it is it's very intimate. But then on like Demons of the Punjab, it's being painted on massive canvas.
It is, but I mean, by intimate, I mean like the drama is quite
I know,
tight,
but
isn't
yeah,
it?
you're right. Yeah, it's just about that family, and all this stuff, happening to them, and like Rosa, it comes down to the action of sitting or standing on a bus and changing everything.
Yeah.
With that, which then has obviously massive wider implications around that. So yeah, Spyfall, you just talked very eloquently about it takes you away there and its depth and stuff. I can't really do that about Spyfall because, but it has got one of my favourite pieces of music in.
Oh, it's good. Yeah,
which is Doctor the Doctor, where like they go to Lenny Henry's chateau or whatever it is, and it's got that sort of string.
It's got the Bond type music, isn't it?
Yeah, version.
It's James Bond, but not James Bond kind of thing. It's
it's got big old drums
strings and horns.
And then you get like a motorbike chase and stuff, and but the shocks of it, when you discover that who we thought from the MI5 whatever it is actually the master, and he's the spy master. And Sacha Dhawan is really nice and amiable, but up to that point, and then he just turns on the dime, and he's
he does
a raging kind of maniac with this streak of sort of wild fun in him at the same time, but he's jealous and he's angry and all this sort of stuff as well. And the Doctor, like Jodie's performance in that bit, like she just can't kind of believe it, and like, oh my god,
he's back. The master's back.
And
Can't get rid of him.
Plane with a bomb. And also, like, I just love like these little bits. This was Mrs. McCrimmon who pointed this out once, and I didn't notice it till I watched it again. But when they're running to get on the plane, and the Doctor jumps in, and she goes, "She's in," like this. And it's so silly. And also, Yaz gets quite a lot to go through because she goes to that other dimension as well. There's quite a lot of sort of parallel world stuff in this, which kind of came into play a bit more kind of big time in Flux. But she gets taken to this space, and which is she just feels lost and hopeless and things. And the Doctor is worried when she goes there, but it's sort of, there's an implication she's talking to the other Doctors in her head as well at that point, which it was always something that quite interested me. Like, and there was, is it in her time or somewhere else, the talk of like multiple brains, and I sort of thought, wonder if they were alluding to the others still being
interesting. Yeah, it could have been layering that thing out. Yeah, I thought of that.
But the Doctor, gets trapped and she gets herself out of it by a bit of fortuitous stuff, but you knew that she would be determined and would do it one way or another. And then when Yaz gets put there, it really kind of shakes her and wrecks her, doesn't it? And I think Yaz in Flux would have handled it very differently to the way Yaz did there. You could see that kind of confidence growth across there. So I'm going to go with Spyfall 1 and 2.
It's a good one. I like it. Joe, one of the things I remember about Spyfall is getting really excited by the fact that the Vord might be back in Doctor Who, because what's it? It was Vord. Daniel Barton, Lenny Henry's character. It was called Vord. The search engine was called Vord. Was it Vord Enterprise or something like that? And of course, the Kasabian in that sort of bright white silhouette could easily have looked like the Vord from the old Hartnell story, The Keys of Marinus.
And also, I like that people thought that was CG, and it was probably enhanced to an extent, but it was guys in.
It was mostly in shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, lit up suits. Which was really cool.
Yeah, which is another thing I like about this era as well. Actually, a lot of the effects there is a lot of CG, but there's a lot of practical effects as well, which seem to give a bit of immediacy to proceedings, to the actors, giving something to kind of react with. I think. Definitely. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I like Spyfall. It's a good one. I know I said, it does feel slightly more like a return to some of the previous era stuff, but that's fine. I love the previous era as well. I still like the bombastic, sort of music and all the other stuff. Maybe not quite as much as I like the atmospheric stuff, but I'm not knocking it at all. I love it, you know. So I'm a Doctor Who fan. I like all Doctor Who, you know.
Yeah, there's always something to enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay, well, I'm gonna because I've realised I've actually got 2 choices left, and I could literally pick every episode, but I'm gonna go for. Oh yes, I am. I'm gonna go for The Haunting of Villa Diodati.
Oh yeah.
And because I want to leave you space, because I'll get a feeling I would have picked the one which you're going to go for next, which I don't know what it is at the moment, but I wonder if it might be what I was going to go for. But I'm thinking this one, actually, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, which is another. Ooh, is it? I think it is kind of unique in a way. You know, the Doctor goes, or she promises the fan that they are gonna go and sit in on that infamous night when Byron and Mary Shelley and Percy Bysshe Shelley were all gathered around on a dark and stormy night locked themselves in a villa and promised to tell each other ghost stories, one of which would become the cultural landmark that is the novel Frankenstein, right? So that is pure grounds for Doctor Who, and we do get that. We get a dark and stormy night. We get a very nice kind of mansion villa type thing, you know, for the well-to-dos. And but what plays out is beyond anything that I'd expected. You know, it's very easy to think, oh yes, Doctor Who can do Frankenstein, you know, and of course Doctor Who, you know, we've had the Brain of Morbius, which has been a total pastiche rip-off of the kind of Hammer House Frankenstein thing. But this is more than just that. This is a lot more. There's a lot more going on than just the Frankenstein is almost like that's the thing that opens the door. But once you're through that door, there is so much more. You know, okay, we get we get a wonderful interplay between the poets, you know, the brains of the outfit, you know, these kind of loose romantic names that we've all sort of known at some point in our sort of, you know, GCSE upbringings and what have you. You know, we all know something that Shelley was a writer, and Byron was a writer, and, you know, Frankenstein was written, you know, and all this sort of stuff. But there's a nice joke in there, actually, which when the Doctor's like, there's not much writing going on here, is there? She tries to kind of get them all to sit down. And so there's a lot of laughs at the start. There's a lot of spooky kind of thrills. I know you like your spooky stuff, Geoff. There's the whole unanswered question of whether the girl and the you know, the woman and the girl that Graham sees is real or not. You know, no one else seems to have seen those throughout the whole thing. And we get some creepy kind of hands going around a place. We get a kind of play on spatial geometry where it's almost Castrovalva-like, where people are running upstairs only to be running back upstairs, or at the top of the stairs, run down, only to reappear at the top of the landing. And, you know, there's that whole thing with the geometry of the house. And then, of course, when things get really dark is when Ashad sort of comes into things. The lone Cyberman who has been warned, you know, who Captain Jack warned the Doctor's crew against, and then as if things couldn't get darker, they really do. They take such a dark turn when he kind of shows up and starts doing his thing. And, you know, it's kind of exemplified by that moment when I think actually he's having a conversation with the Doctor and Mary Shelley, and they're talking about his child and the fact he snuffed his child's life out because he could. And at this moment you think, whoa, this is something else now. You know, we're not just talking, you know, light-hearted kids entertainment. We're not talking Brain and Morbius scares, brains flopping on the floor and stuff like that. We're talking about a dark, psychotic psychology that is at the level of a serial killer. Pretty much. That's what we're dealing with here. You know, there's no fancy dressing on this at all. You know, we're not trying to dumb it down, not trying to lighten things up. This is a guy who kills because he can, because he wants to.
There's that moment where he finds the baby in the cot, doesn't he? And you're not quite sure what he's going to do.
No, that's it. But the element of danger, the element of threat that introduces suddenly right there, suddenly makes you sit up and take notice of this story. You know, there's a lot of clever stuff going on as well. There's a lot of sciencey cyber stuff with the Cyberium, you know, the kind of Cybermen's AI that's kind of, you know, takes on a sort of nebulous form and can infuse
crystal,
different hosts and stuff like that, which I like, and the fact it's sort of possessed Percy Bysshe Shelley as well is a nice twist. But the atmospherics in this story, the sheer storytelling itself, all of this within 50 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Of Sunday night drama, it's an incredible story by any standards, and this is essential in that respect.
Another Chris Chibnall, great villain. I know that he co-wrote the episode, didn't he?
Oh, there's a single credit is to Maxine
Alderson. But he would have said, this is the character, the basics for, and probably rewrote the dialogue. But
and given that Ashad's a character who's going to recur in literally the next story, it's got to introduce this guy here.
It doesn't work like Russell T Davies says to Moffat, there's a character called Captain Jack, away with you now. You do what you want with it. It don't work like that. And it
this is planned. This is considered.
Yeah, exactly. And Ashad is another one of the brilliant villains that Chibnall created. He made the Daleks badass and scary again. Tazim Shah was a horrible bastard, and of course the Pating, the biggest little shit of them all.
Yeah.
But, his master was cruel and twisted. He gave us some great stuff. Everything you've said about this episode, I agree. It is.
It's a cracker for me.
It's rattling along, and it's all it's all good fun. It's all a bit spooky. I like a bit silly. I love a helmet with a plume and all.
Yeah, I love a plume. Yeah, that's it. Brilliant.
And then you see the lightning crackling and out on the lake, and something's there, and you're like, well, what is it? Ooh, and it's sort of. It's been quite sort of clever and layered in a way. They're sort of Frankenstein's coming into live fire. Elements of the story within the story, and then when you discover it's a Cyberman, you sort of don't think you see him clearly to start with, but it's a Cyberman. You think, oh God, what's going on here? And then when you discover it is the lone Cyberman and what he's actually like, those expectations are subverted again on it.
Yeah, and it's nice as well because you could argue that the Cybermen were kind of an extension of the original Frankenstein's monster, right? And I know there's a sciencey bit which Kit Pedler says, if we replace parts of ourselves, we eventually become like this, But that, in a way, the genesis of that is the same genesis as the original Frankenstein monster. What if you could reanimate something? What if you could replace bits of a body with another body and stuff like that? It's that same, there's a DNA strand with pretty much, definitely a DNA to that kind of monster, and the fact that the Cyberman then informs the genesis of the Frankenstein monster, it's a nice little, you could argue it's a little bit, a little bit cheeky to kind of do that, but again, why not? Doctor Who's done this, and I think also importantly, what this really does is make the Cybermen scary again.
Yes,
because in the last few stories, they'd kind of they've done what a lot of Doctor Who monsters do over time. They kind of just become foot soldiers or standard kind of villain of the week. And I think, to be honest, it sort of happens again after this. With in Flux, they sort of become foot soldiers.
Yeah.
They're not really a threat. They're not the main threat in there. So it's But here they do really what Earthshock did back in the Davison years. Is reintroduce the Cybermen as a credible, scary threat.
It was really good to have them. Even with just the one main. Character of them, scary and dangerous again and threatening, and it was just a brilliant creation on it. And he comes back in Power of the Doctor as well, doesn't he?
Yes, cloned.
I just forgot. I've got to change my list. And there's a great sort of single take bit where he storms the cells and everyone's firing at him and he's just like blasting them off.
Yeah.
And he kind of he's cloned and he's sort of pals with the Master again. I mean, maybe is it against his wishes? I don't know, but I liked seeing him again.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
He's such a good character that you can get bogged down in the what ifs about it if you want, but maybe it makes.
He's a cloned character, so doesn't matter.
We don't have the time on screen for all the explanations about stuff like that, and maybe that's bad writing, or maybe it's my stupid.
No. You don't need explanations.
No, I don't think you
really.
Need it. He's
I mean, you've got all the explanation you need. He's cloned. He's not the original Ashad. That's it. End of story. You know?
And
just because you're a clone doesn't mean to say you're going to naturally inherit all the memories. I would imagine if such a thing were possible, they'd have to pipe the memories into you because you're essentially a different person as you come out of that cloning vat. It's only in kind of standard sci-fi that a clone does inherit the memories of its original somehow. You could just fudge it and say, well, you clone the body, you clone the brain, you clone the memories, and blah 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 blah. But there's as much reason to do that as not to do that, really, because it's all made up bollocks anyway.
Well, that's it. It's the writer's story. They can do what they want.
They do what they like. Yeah.
There's no, established rules.
Do what you like, mate. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. That's what I say, innit?
The cloning plot police aren't going around, are they?
Cloning police. No, that's not technically possible to do that. Dude, cloning is basic right now compared to what you're looking at on here. So don't give me the rules for some future guffin, right, when it doesn't really even exist in reality. Not like the moon thing, that's different.
The moon landing?
No, the moon egg thing, which you threw in earlier, because that grates me. That's different. That's real science getting fucked around with. So
does it grate you because the moon's made of cheese? Cheese grater.
What's your number 2, mate?
It's a prime opportunity for a sound effect there. My number 2.
Yes.
It's gone off pissed now. I'm going to go with Flux here because it is one episode.
Oh, you're doing all of Flux.
My rules. Because it cliffhangers from one to another. So why Flux, you might say?
Why Flux, I'm saying, Geoff? Come on, tell me.
Because it's being awesome. Because there's a number of reasons, really.
I haven't got a beep noise on here.
No, I wasn't sure if you would. So the first reason is narratively, and the second is production reasons. So narratively, this is the show at, I know we keep saying it epic here today, but this is the show at its biggest scale ever.
Most epic, I think. It really is. Yeah.
It was hopping from time spans, planets, universes. It had all the major villains in. It made the Sontarans
yes,
took them away from being comedy.
Yeah. There was a little bit of comedy,
a little bit.
It didn't. But it made them a credible threat again, didn't it?
Chibnall did another.
He's done the old monsters pretty well, hasn't he? You got to say.
He did all 4 of the classics.
Yeah, Daleks,
Master, and the Sontarans, and he made them amazing. But this series, probably everyone listening has watched it, but it's got a bit of horror to it. It's got a bit of kind of war sci-fi type stuff. It's got a bit of kind of bonkers, sci-fi, with Once Upon a Time. It's got incredible villains in Swarm and Azure, Passenger. You've got great side characters like Professor Jericho and a story of, the Flux, which is a kind of unstoppable, virus event type thing, which is decimating the universe, and then they've kind of got to go and pick up the pieces afterwards and find the survivors and try to fix things and solve what's left, and then you got the Vanquishers at the end, which some people didn't like, but it's got a number of kind of layers to it, like a lot of stuff in this series. The Sontarans actually win in it.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
They lure the Cybermen and the Daleks in as under the pretense of kind of joining forces, and they wipe them all out. But then the Doctor and Fam, they ultimately are the vanquishers and win by stopping them. And so I saw some talk of, well, why is it called the Vanquishers? Well, it's just some Tyrants, isn't it? And then our lot afterwards. And also I can't believe I forgot John Bishop's Dan, who's just brilliant in it.
There you go. Yeah.
He's very Graham-like, but he's just such a nice guy in it, fun, and I liked being in his company, and Carvanista as well. Lupine dog man who was a grumpy little bugger.
It was good. I love the interplay between Carvanista and Dan.
Yeah, they had a relationship, that developed. And then I said about the production.
You did.
Series. So I think over time things are becoming more clear about everything here with Flux. Obviously, it was made in the middle of the pandemic, and everything was difficult then, and filming no less so. You couldn't go near people. It took double the length to do everything because of setup and sanity. A lot of that was a question, but sanitizing and all of that sort of stuff. And there was a recent interview with Chris Chibnall on the Outpost Skaro podcast where he talked a bit about it. And we've spoken to people from the series, and it was quite clear that, we thought that there was supposed to be 8 episodes at one point, then it got condensed down to 6 because of time and various things like that. But Chris revealed that there was a period of about a week. They just didn't know whether they were going to be able to do it. When you hear things like Jodie turned down other work to commit to doing Doctor Who and finishing it, because the BBC might have just said, well,
let's
forget
just
it,
call it a day.
Leave it now, and we'll come back when the world is back to normal.
Reboot later.
Yeah, but they didn't, and and Chibnall said something like they didn't know where the money was coming from. Could they literally do it? Could what was going to happen? And he said he had to do things to make it happen, and he didn't elaborate on this. And maybe I don't know. He sold his internal organs and he sold
his soul.
Yeah, they obviously.
Yeah, it was touch and go, wasn't it? I think that's really the key.
Yeah. And I think whether you like it or not, I think the fact that we got a series and we got something that was so
as good as it was. I mean, it was
during an immensely difficult period is absolute kudos to all of them, and to hear that Jodie gave up other stuff to do it because she wanted to and she loved being a Doctor. Kind of makes me, love her and her Doctor even more. And there was obviously things happen. Like Chibnall said that they had started planning story ideas and things, and they had to basically dump a number of scripts so they could kind of focus on Flux, which I guess would have been the story arc. And then there's been some talk about it all felt a bit rushed towards the end. And do you know what? Yeah, maybe. Although it all makes sense, but if we were going to have 8 episodes originally, then things would have more time to breathe. And so I'm not saying things are immune to criticism. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it. But bearing in mind the insurmountable odds they had to pull that off, I'm aware it's only TV, but it's still real. It was really hard to do it, and I think we were lucky that we got anything.
I think Flux is amazing, regardless of it being made against that sort of background. If it hadn't been COVID and it still came out looking as good as it did, and the story was exactly the same in the episode, again, it's still epic. Either way you look at it, and you either love it or you don't like it, which is which is fine.
What's that? It's the best series of New Who.
I think it's very good. I do. Do you know what? Right, it's. Doctor Who has done, right, or sort of series-long stories before. Obviously, Trial of the Time Lord with Colin Baker, right, and kind of the Key to Time thing. Before that, even if you go back and look at things like the 10-episode story, the War Games at the end of Patrick Troughton, it's one story, but it's 10 weeks of telling, so it's 2 more weeks than Flux it took to tell its story, and maybe even something like the Keys of Marinus, even 6 episodes, but every episode was its own story, right, contained within an overall kind of arc, if you like. So Doctor Who has done that. The Daleks Master Plan, that's the other one I was trying to think of, the 12 episode thing. So Doctor Who has done this before, and each time it's been with a sense of something epic around it. So it was only a matter of time, I think, before the new reboot series was going to do this. The fact that they did it against the backdrop of COVID and everything else, and all the restrictions and worries and hassles and troubles, and it's just astonishing.
And I agree with you. Like, even if it had come out within a normal year, it still would have been
astonishing.
Incredible.
Yeah, maybe even with a couple of filler episodes, which we either need or we didn't get them either way, so it doesn't really matter. They don't even play into it. The storytelling within Flux.
Well, the ambition on it was off the chart, and the fact Chibnall wrote all of it as well.
Exactly.
He had a couple of writers on it, but it just boggles.
It is. It's incredible.
Have done that.
Yeah, and for it to look as good as it does as well.
It looks amazing. Yeah.
Was it DNEG working on most of the CGI for that? And those vistas with the Centauran spaceships in the docks, and
all of that stuff is
the armies crashing on the plains of Crimea, the space station in orbit against the Grand Serpent space station above that planet. It's extraordinary. That is actually better than Cameron's Gateway Station in Aliens, which I know is 1984, 86. 86. All right, it's a lot of years ago, but nonetheless, he had millions of dollars to kind of produce that sort of thing. This thing is done on a sixpence in comparison. It's a fraction of the budget for that. And these people are all, everyone behind Flux is making it because they love it. As all the stories are kind of playing out, all the people we've interviewed, Pete Levy, Ajay Salim,
John Mathers,
Kevin,
that's even more.
McNally,
it's even more apparent that they loved it, because they really could have just gone,
sod it,
face this headache.
It's too risky. I don't want to catch the plague or anything like that.
So that's my number 2. What's yours?
I've done my number 2, haven't I?
Done your 2.
This is my number 1 now.
Do your number 1. My
number 1 is going to be Fugitive of the Jadoon. It has to be.
What did you think I was going to pick as one of my others?
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said there. I was moving.
What did you think I was going to pick as
you still got one more to go. I'm not gonna say. If you say it, I'm gonna go ha ha ha. That is the one I thought you were gonna say. But no, I sort of knew you were going to pick Flux as well, so I've stayed clear of that. And the fact you've done all of Flux means I don't have to do any of it, right? Yeah. So that's good. But I was sort of torn between Fugitive of the Jadoon and Resolution, actually.
Yeah, that was on my list. But
because Resolution,
I've remembered something.
Yeah, I think it's an astonishing Dalek story, but we've talked about it quite a lot. So I think what we have to do, because it is an essential 13th Doctor thing, is talk about the Fugitive Doctor, the Timeless Children, and all of that stuff which permeates this era, which basically gives it its additional identity, its place within the Doctor Who kind of continuity or canon, if you like.
I'll just interject here and say, Timeless Children story arc, we like it.
We do. Yeah,
you can check out our Hot Takes 1 episode, which was a few episodes ago, if you want to find out why and find out more about us embracing the wrath of the internet by declaring that we like it.
Yeah, well, do you know what? There's a lot more people who like it than don't. I think it's just those who don't have tended to be very vocal about it, actually. And so we're not getting into that. I'm unashamedly a big fan of the whole thing. Not that I have to defend it or defend my position. It is what it is. It's out there, and you either take it or leave it as a fan. And for me, though, I I love it. You know, when anything pulls the rug out from under my feet. You know, I love Doctor Who. I always have done. You know, it's part of my growing up. As I said, it's part of my teenage years, my early 20s, and, you know, going to university and even getting married. You know, my mother-in-law was worried that I was going to cosplay as some Doctor Who character.
Really?
Down the aisle. We got married within a stone's throw of a Doctor Who exhibition, which kind of added to the tension she was feeling. And, you know, it's always been there. You know, it's been there when my children were born, you know, when they've been ill, when they've been well, all those things. It's been my comfort and my go-to throughout all of that, you know, and I love it dearly. But when it changes, you know, when it pulls the rug out, when it upsets things that I think I know about my program, when it actually throws up into the air all those elements that have been the kind of foundation of its landscape, you know, the sort of landmarks within that landscape, and it just obliterates them, or picks them up and replaces them, or lifts the veil and shows me that there's more beyond it. I love all that. I really do. You know, it's because it gives me more to love, right? More to get into. And I kid you not, I mean, again, this is Freya and I, my daughter and I, watching Fugitive of the Judoon. And I know I've said it before on the podcast, but, you know, here we're talking about it specifically, I think probably for the first time, right? Here you have a story that we know the Judoon are coming back, right? Great monster from the Russell T Davies era. And I love them then. The big space rhinos, they're coming back. There's new animatronics. They're bigger, they're bulkier, they got more movement. They got the Boko Joe Rofoco thing going back on, which is they got their big marker pens